Howdy ho, friends and foes, and welcome to Dads on Life, your weekly episodic, well, not weekly, your occasionally episodic show.
Sporadically. Sporadic.
when 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 the stars align, um, when the moon is full and the skies are hazed, and show on parenting from a male perspective. I'm your host Jay Miles, and with me, as sometimes, are my co-host Keith Bogan,
Glad to be back at the J Miles Butthead Show.
Chad Holloway,
Good morning.
and Dave Duesenberry.
Go Niners.
Doug is on assignment, probably off volunteering for something or doing his indentured servant thing. Anyway, we decided we're going to do something quickly of where we've been. It's been about a month and a half, I think, since we've recorded. So we're going to do about a half an hour of where we've been. I'll start quickly of just this week. We exited the single digit numbers for children's age in our house. Sadie turned 10. So that's out of the way. I know.
Any of us invited to the birthday party? No, of course not. What a dog, I tell you.
We didn't have one yet. Anyway, one thing we did do, Keith, Doug, and I 2 weeks ago went to see a show at a very interesting bar called Salty's that I found out used to be Paul's Tavern in Lake Como, if you want to call it that, Belmar, sitting in the shadow of the tower that I started my radio career in, essentially. In Belmar, we saw Life of Agony and Prong. Interesting experience. Weird room for a show like that, but so that's it. That's for now. That's it. I mean, who wants to take it from here?
I'll take it. I mean, so we call our show Dads on Life, right? So we there's two parts of that. We talk about being a dad, and now I think I'm going to talk about the life portion, right? Because sometimes life happens, and that's kind of what's happened for the last month and a half for all of us, right? So the last time we got together was roughly somewhere after Thanksgiving-ish, early December-ish. We were going into holiday season. And for everybody out there watching this, we all know that, the holiday season is the time that you spend with friends and family. And for me, I actually got a chance to experience a little bit of family and life together, right? So you'll notice the lovely wave animated background that I have there. That is actually a snippet of a video that I took from the shores of San Cristobal, the fort in Puerto Rico, up in San Juan. Got a chance to spend the holiday week in a different way. Got to travel really for the first time in a very long time with all three of my kids. We got a chance to spend some time together, spending Christmas in a place with palm trees, which is something that my kids weren't used to, right? So we did it this year because last year in 2022, right before Thanksgiving, my mom passed away suddenly. And one of the things that we had talked about in the summer before she passed away was taking a family trip over to Puerto Rico. My wife is Puerto Rican, and I've had a chance to go to the island a couple of times now. We figured that my mom would love the warmth, would love the warm water. She loved to swim, would love, just checking out some of the shops in and around Old San Juan. I thought we thought it would make a really, really good, fun family vacation for all of us. And my mom hated to fly, but she was willing to give flying a shot just to do that trip for us. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to do it because she passed away a couple of months later. So we kind of made the decision, Christmas time is tough when you lose family members. I've now lost both my mom and my dad at this point. And so when I talked to the kids, we decided that instead of just doing the usual trading gifts, I mean, my kids have gotten older. They're all in their, teens and early 20s at this point. We decided that instead of just trading a bunch of stuff under the tree, we were going to invest in an experience. Something a little different at a holiday season that felt a little different anyway without my mom being there. So we took a trip. We went to Puerto Rico for the week. Um, Thankfully, my kids didn't want to kill me, and I didn't want to kill them at the end of the week. So I'm going to call that a rousing success. We got to experience things that they'd never had a chance to do before. We went ziplining. We went swimming at Loquillo Beach, where the water is like bath water and there's no waves, and got a chance to do some shopping and just like got a chance to spend some good quality time with my kids at a time that I don't know how often I'm going to be able to do that again moving forward. They're older. My daughter's already moved out of the house and started her life. My older son is going to be starting college next fall. My younger son is rapidly moving forward in life. So I felt like this was like a lightning in the bottle kind of moment to go forth and just spend some time as a dad with my kids before they kind of spread to the four winds and go out and live their lives. And it was really cool.
Nice.
Well, I'll follow up
might
on that one
add,
too.
Dave,
'Cause-
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, Dave, I remember your Facebook posts when you were in Puerto Rico. Now, I may have missed some, but I'm pretty sure none of those pictures were of your kids. They were all of you and Jess.
Oh no, there are a couple.
No.
There
Nope.
are
I
a
don't
couple.
remember seeing anything of the kids.
Yep.
Oh yeah. That honestly, I took a couple and posted them, but for the most part, I tried to stay in the moment. I took a couple of pictures here and there. I didn't take nearly as many as maybe I should have, but I tried to kind of be mindful and stay in the moment and enjoy what I was at, what I was doing, and who I was with while I was there. That was kind of my mindset that week. I needed that. I've been mourning all year with my mom passing, so I needed that time with my family, and I didn't want to be distracted by having to get the thing out, take pictures all the time, and blah 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 blah. Like I took a couple, and I have some saved, especially like when we were doing activities like in the rainforest and at the beach and ziplining and stuff. But like day to day, it was just nice just to kind of be in the moment and be present with them.
Yeah, I know Puerto Rico is really nice. We were there, I think it was about a year ago, and it was a lot of fun. Just a beautiful country. Um, so what do we do? I think you guys remember, I think we talked about this maybe back in September. My brother-in-law passed, and so my sister's kind of out of the picture. So I've got a couple of nephews that need to, one turned 18, so he's emancipated or whatever, or an adult now. And the other one was like 12, I think he's 12. So he's living with my mom, who's 78, I think, almost 80 years old. And what we decided to do was to go out where Frankie is, my son, in Phoenix, and spend a week. So we went and spend a week in Phoenix. Actually, it was 10 days. And then as part of that, we drove up to the Grand Canyon. So we've seen one subset of the group has seen kind of the big canyon. And this time we went up to see the horseshoe bend of the canyon. And then coming back, my mom wanted to go to Sedona, so we did that. So I rented a big car and everything, so we had 7 people in there and packed our bags and stuff. So it was a real good time. It was really, I think, good for everybody to be together. And our family size has really shrank down a lot. So since probably 2015, we've had quite a few deaths in the family. So our family went from a decent size to not very big now. But it's just nice to get everybody together. And it was, Frankie's first time living on his own in Phoenix. He couldn't leave because of his work. So we wanted to make sure that, when he wasn't at work, that we were available for him to see. So we did that. While we're there, he did get COVID. So,
Oh,
uh,
gee.
so that was at the
course.
very end. It was bad, but he recovered okay in that process. But at least part of it was we were there, so I could help him buy a few things to kind of make it a little easier on him.
Yep.
Bought him a humidifier and kept his cupboards full and all that stuff. So, and before we went, I totaled my car on December 15th. I was crossing, it was my fault. So I was crossing, I turned left, and I thought there were 2 lanes, but there were 3 lanes. So somebody hit the front of my car, and even the tire was even off the car. But I had everybody the girls were in the car with me, and it's a safe car though. So everybody you couldn't even tell it was hit on the inside, but outside the front was just it was undrivable. So still dealing with that, still without a car, still got a rental, but
Oh, jeez.
we're to do. What else? Then after that, we came home. My cousin's wife she was 56 and she had been fighting cancer for 8 years, and she passed. So
Oh,
it was
sorry, man.
pretty bad deal. For the whole family, they got 3 kids
Oof.
and several grandkids. So I want to say 5 grandkids now. So
Yeah.
it's weird. He's my age, and they've been together since they were like 16. And I love my cousin. I love all my cousins, but man, I just felt so bad for him. But
Mhm.
it's one of the things that came out of that is we're talking about having a big cousin trip this summer somewhere for a week. So that'll be a real positive thing. But yeah, so that was my time. It was there were highs and lows in it. So
Yeah.
it was good though.
You guys you've all done much more with your last couple of months than I have. I've been very buried in work. My job, just to repeat, I do human resources for a private equity firm out of New York City. And it's been hellacious, 60 plus hour, 70-hour weeks, um, which my son Justin will consistently remind me, Dad, would you close the laptop occasionally because you're going. And I've been traveling into the city a lot more, which is a 4-hour round trip commute to get to where I need to go. So we haven't really gone anywhere together. We haven't really done much. I've had several trips to Ohio. We did engage in our yearly idiocy because Jeremy comes home for the holiday break, then he goes back to march with the marching band in the bowl, whatever bowl game Ohio State is in, and then he comes home again, and then he goes back for his the end of the break to for his now last semester. So for me, that's sort of the crux of what's been going on in my head, is that we're preparing for two things. One, for Justin to move out, which he says is going to happen in the spring, spread his wings, if you will. And the other is for the invasion of Jeremy to be back here. Not that I'll ever notice, because he'll hide in the basement and game whenever he's not working. So I'll never see him. Um, but and Jeremy hasn't yet developed the patience for people like me who, as I was talking about before we started recording, that I'm more forgetful than he would like, and I'm not necessarily as technologically advanced as he would like. So he
You don't say.
hasn't quite developed the patience for things like that I would like to have seen. Um, so I'm sort of preparing for him to come back home, and I think anyone who has more than one kid says, that we go through these times where Justin's the older one, Jeremy's the younger one, and I'll see something Jeremy does, and I'll be like, but Justin didn't do that. Of course, they're different kids. They're going to do different things.
Yep.
We all have that instinct of, well, why are you doing that? Your brother didn't do that. Your sibling didn't do that, whatever. I'm going to have a lot of that. There's some things that they have in common, but there are definitely some things where they're very, very different. And Justin's been really a joy to live with. I had this vision that Jeremy's going to frustrate me, probably because he's not going to come out of his lair in the basement. And I'm trying to mentally prepare myself for how I'm going to handle that, because it's going to be a very different experience than having Justin here. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't done nearly the traveling, or, as you know, the driving that I typically do. Now, with that said, I probably still have driven more in the last month and a half than most people do. One of those trips to the trip to taking Jeremy back to school was in the middle of a nor'easter. That was terrifying, especially for Jeremy, because he wasn't driving. And I've driven in a lot of bad conditions. This was the worst conditions I've ever seen on Route 80, Interstate 80 up in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Cars spun out in ditches, trucks spun out in ditches all over the place. We were watching people slide and lose control literally right in front of us, right behind us. So that was certainly an experience. We are starting to plan some things. I'm going to have a little bit of travel coming up. Nashville with my brother, one of my brothers. We're going to do that in February for just a weekend. Cleveland in April for just a weekend to go see the women's Final Four, stuff like that, where the boys will be with me. So that'll be fun. Nothing overly exciting. Life is sort of like when someone says to me, "Hey, what's new?" I'm like, "Well, nothing really. Life is just life."
And
Mm-hmm.
you know what? There are times that's kind of a blessing, right?
Yeah, I think
So
it's
there
one
are
thing to look
times
at.
that life just being life and not like fall down destructive chaos is kind of nice. Um, I'm kind of there, right? So I've been spending the last year plus, um, dealing with a bunch of different stuff, right? I One of the big things that I've had to work on over the last year is settling my mom's estate, right? So I'm the executor of her estate and making sure that all of that stuff is in order, working with my brother and my sister and all that, the stresses that go with that. I was able to get that closed out a couple of days after we got home from Puerto Rico in the first week of January. So that's done. And with that comes making sure I have things taken care of for my mom's house, which will be my house in about 2.5 years down in Delaware. Um, getting basically, I have to buy my brother and sister out. So I was able to finish buying my sister out. That's done. And I'll be paying my 401k loan back for the next 5 years as I figure that out. But thankfully, my brother, so for those that don't know on the show, um, I had one sibling until I was 35 years old, and then all of a sudden I picked up another. Now, this is weird. My sister was given up for adoption when she was born, and I found out about her existence when I was about 12 or 13. And then she was always kind of like the mythical unicorn on the outside of the forest that you hear stories about, but you don't know if they're true or not. Um, I didn't meet my sister, and she's my full blood sister, my mom and my dad. I didn't meet my full blood sister until I was 35. Um, when that happened, obviously she came into our lives. I instantly became an uncle. My sister has two sons and a daughter that are roughly within a couple of years of my three kids, which is pretty crazy. Um, and as we're after once she came into our lives, my mom obviously factored in my sister into all of her stuff for her will, beneficiaries, and everything like that. My mom was like totally thankful that my sister was able to come back into her life, right? So, um, you know, I have a historically much closer relationship with my brother because he was there for 35 years before she came on. I love my sister. When we went and we got things settled, I wanted to make sure that things were good for everybody. My big thing is I'm I'm a rabid communicator, right? So I've seen histories, and maybe some of you guys have seen this, where estates get settled, relatives get a little snippy, and they don't, yeah, and they don't always play well. That has happened in my family when my grandmother passed away. My uncles and aunts to this day really don't talk to each other because of issues. So I was determined as the executor to be as open and forthcoming in all communication and issues and matters as possible so that there was full transparency so everybody knew where things were. I shared spreadsheets of expenses and income and everything coming down so everybody knew exactly where things stood. And I think as of right now that the estate is closed, everybody, from what they told me, is good. So, but that was a lot of work. It was a lot of stress. Getting through that and finishing that was a big accomplishment for this year. Now it's just a matter of figuring out how to get through things until my youngest graduates high school, and then I'm able to migrate at least a couple hours south and get settled in a new place.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to the concept of people not getting along when an executor has to make decisions for an estate. When my mother passed back in 1993, I'm actually horrified that I've been without her for 30 years now. Um, uh, it put some distance between two of my brothers for some time, which they got over, but it took 3 or 4 years for that to heal. My kids weren't around then, so they didn't see that, but they've heard stories. But it also taught me a great deal about I don't want to have nearly as much stuff laying around when my kids have to do that.
Word.
And so I've been divesting, and I have a lot less stuff in my house than my parents had in theirs, although I still have too much. So I've been actually pretty active on Facebook Marketplace trying to sell more stuff off because it's just trash anyway.
Good.
And uh, and now we are what was it 8 months ago? My aunt, in one of my few remaining relatives, talk about a small family. One of my few remaining relatives in New York, my Aunt B, who was 98, passed away, and we have nothing to do with being executors of estates, but apparently she left something for each of us that we won't find out probably for 12 to 18 months because the probate process in New York is insane. Um, so whatever it is, whatever. But we, my brother Joel and I went to visit the apartment, and you could tell immediately, like, there's not really that much there that anybody would want because my aunt had different tastes. But it brings up the memories of what happened 30 years ago.
Mm.
So I could see how careful he was being about everything he said when my other brother was listening, and we were tying him in with a Zoom chat. And yeah, that's never a pleasant thing to go through. I think I hope this generation coming up has learned. They're certainly not as materialistic. They just don't collect stuff like we did, or our parents, certainly not like our parents did.
Yeah.
And B, that whatever they have, that hopefully they just they work through it ahead of time. I think our parents' generation didn't talk about things like death. We were better at it, but I hope our kids are really much better at it, that they plan well ahead so they don't have to think about it at all, that it's all just spelled out by the time their time comes.
I mean,
Mhm.
I'll agree. My mom basically gave me her will and all of her paperwork and everything for her stuff like 5, 6 years before she passed. Like I I I get a lot of my personality from my mom, and one of her big things is preparedness and communication. Two things that she does very, very, very well. And I was like, Mom, what are you giving me this for? Like, I don't need any of this stuff. But she's like, file this away, keep it there. If something happens to me, I want to know that everything is taken care of. Review it, go over it with your brother and sister. That's fine. Everything is here. And I learned a lot from this experience, from the way that my mom, it's weird to think of it this way, but I learned a lot about how to kind of settle my own stuff. She set a fantastic example of how to make sure things were prepared and taken care of. Even little things like she took out she had like a little like a $9,000 or $10,000 life insurance policy. So why would you take out something so small? It was the perfect amount to cover all of her final expenses with like
Yep.
nothing left over. And I was like, it's things like that that I wouldn't normally think of, but in the moment, that little bit mattered so much because now all I had to do was just get everything taken care of for the arrangements and didn't have to worry about any of the finances.
Yeah.
It's like, and when you're grieving in that moment, the impact that that makes is extraordinary. So right away, that's going on my hit list because I don't want to have whoever's going to have to deal with my shit have to. I want them to just focus on. There's so much to do when you have to do that, and any way that I can make it easier is what I want to do.
It's interesting. Each of you mentioned something. So when I was born, my mom bought a policy for that for me. So that when I croak, so I've got it. It's all paid up. I've just got it sitting in a folder to pay for my
Wow.
medical expenses. But she bought it when I was born, And I did the same thing for Frankie. Then I turned around, I bought something for him, so he's going to have that, and I'll have it all paid up by the time, by the time I transfer it over to him. So that was the first thing, and then the second thing is Keith was talking about like cleaning out houses. So as I was saying earlier, we had quite a few deaths, pretty rapid succession over in the late teens of a few years ago. And my mom had to clean out my grandparents' house because both my grandma and my grandpa died, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, it was just so hard." So she cleaned that house out and had an auction company come in, and they auctioned off a bunch of furniture and that kind of stuff, and then so now she's cleaning out her house, so she's got it down next to nothing. And one thing that I used to do is I used to send, every few weeks, I'd send her a little something to say, "Hey mom, hope you're well and everything's going well. Just want to let you know I'm thinking of you." Because we live so far apart, it's hard to see each other. I mean, we talk on the phone, but I would always send like a little something she could, a little surprise in the mail or surprise that would be delivered to her house. And she called me up one day and she goes, "Hey, can you quit sending me that stuff? I'm trying to get my house cleaned out." She goes, I throw out one thing and you send another. so
That's
so I
funny.
stopped. So I just call her now. She goes, "I've got everything I need, son. Don't worry about me." So that's where we are with that. But it's interesting because I think that's something that people do face over time. And and another example is I knew somebody whose grandma had went through the stuff in their house, and they had taken like masking tape and put people's names on it and then put that on the bottom of whatever the item was, who they wanted to have it.
Interesting.
So even like I mean, I can't remember some of the things, but they're like either whether it was a statue, they had some nice like real art statues like Earth
Yeah.
Day, things like that. Then they put the name on that, but just interesting ways to handle that.
Yeah, I mean, my mom was not very materialistic. My dad was the one who collected all the stuff. When my dad passed away in 2007, um, they had just moved from a bigger house in New Jersey down to the place where they're at in Delaware. And my dad, like, they tried cleaning out a bunch of stuff, but my dad was not one to give stuff away very easily. So they ended up moving with a lot more than what my mom would have wanted. So when my dad passed away and my mom was there in the house, she took it upon herself to basically purge just about everything. She offered it to my brother and myself, and eventually, obviously, my sister as well. Um, but she didn't keep a lot of stuff, you know. And that is a lesson that I am desperately trying to take on. I tend to bitch and purge stuff. Like I'll get a bunch of crap and then I'll look around and be like, "There's too much stuff around here," and then I'll throw everything out. So I am, my house is pretty big where I'm at now, and I'm moving to a place that's about maybe a third of the size, maybe even a quarter of the size of where I'm at now. And I'm really looking forward to it because it'll give me the opportunity to just get rid of a bunch of stuff. Because I've seen that having a bunch of stuff, that's what people end up fighting over, right? If you don't have a lot of stuff, there's not a lot to fight over. And so that's kind of the direction that I'm going in. I want to be a little bit more minimalist on the stuff that I have here and make it easier for my kids.
I will never
Well,
forget the story I've told my kids several times. I have a my best friend in the world, a woman named Val, and her husband Paul. And the three of us are very, very close. Paul's like my brother, and I watched him. This goes back 7 or 8 years, when his dad wasn't doing particularly well. Sort of losing some mental faculties. They moved him in with them, but instead of getting rid of his stuff, they took all of his stuff out of his like 3-bedroom house, rented two 10 by 40-foot storage lockers, and packed them perfectly, like floor to ceiling, cubed it perfectly, absolutely jam packed, and they left it there for 3 years. And then Paul's dad died. Not It wasn't very expected, but he passed away. And I spent a couple of weeks when the dust settled, if you will. I spent a couple of weeks with my friend Paul going through all that stuff. van load by van load, picking it up at the storage locker, bringing it back to their house and going through it. And Paul had rented a fairly large dumpster. And I remember the agony that he went through, because item after item, dumpster, dumpster, dumpster. And he wanted very much to keep stuff, keep something of his father's. And almost none of it was helpful. I mean, there was a bunch of tools in there, and Paul's a big, do it yourself. He's very handy. And so he kept some tools. 98% or more of that stuff went in the dumpster.
Yeah.
Filled it twice. But the agony of what he went through, so part of that I put on Paul Sr., and it was Paul Sr., that why did he keep all that crap anyway? And I swore at that point, that was the tipping point in my life where my sons will not have that kind of shit. As time goes on, there'll be less and less and less in this house. And eventually I'll downsize too, because it's a bit too big a house for one person. There's no fucking way in hell that my kids are going to go through what I watched Paul go through. It was terrible.
Well, I mean, some things that have gone on that I should mention real quick. One of them was actually the week after the last show we recorded. Delana, she continued on with the wrestling and that. She finally won her bracket in our tournament. She's tried for 3 years. She's tried. And part of it was this year she didn't have the girl that she knows from Marlboro, who she's wrestled twice, once last year in our tournament and then once 2 years ago in Brick. She didn't have her in a bracket, so she won. Wrestling season was pretty good for her. Sadie gave up, but she dislocated her knee. A couple other things happened along the way, and it just was, it's better off that Sadie doesn't do it. But Delana, it's looking like things are going to continue on. The season's over actually because of not doing Jersey Shore for the Mat Rats. The season ended this week for middle school. So
hold on, I got to ask this question: which one of them dislocated their knee?
Sadie,
a 10-year-old.
Yeah,
a 10-year-old is wrestling and dislocated her knee.
Yeah.
Does that sound a little odd to any of you guys?
No, it happens. I mean,
what,
it'd be no different.
I didn't tell you.
I know about it. I know about it. I'm just a 10-year-old.
Boy,
Yeah.
I mean, Lord knows, I freaking broke my foot and did all that stuff when I was 10. That doesn't surprise me.
Amazing.
She got in a V-sit, which, if you know anything about your body, it's something you shouldn't do. And then had a girl kind of fall on top of her.
Yeah.
He's not going to hold up. It's going to slip.
Well, we got to kick Chad out the door here because he's got to go to church. So we should probably wrap up. I hate to be brief about it, but I know Chad's chomping at the bit. And he just, by the way, congratulations on your 4-year anniversary, Chad.
Yes.
Oh, thanks so much.
Congratulations, man.
We are also going to, and this will leave it there, and with a cliffhanger of one of us is going to be granddads on life as well.
All right.
Okay, we'll talk about that next time.
We will leave it right there and let everybody go, what the, mostly anybody who is paying attention, several of you that are going to listen to this later, know. So, but anyway, for all of us here at Dads on Life, take care, everybody. And of course, Keith, eat my shorts.
Have a good one, guys.
Take care, guys.
Bye, guys.